Okay, what's up with President Obama? He took a weird shot at the Supreme Court. The president today warning the justices not to strike down his health care law.
I just remind conservative commentators that for years what we've heard is the biggest problem on the bench was judicial activism or a lack of judicial restraint. That an unelected group of people would somehow overturn a duly constituted and passed law. Well, there's a good example, and I'm pretty confident that this court will recognize that and not take that step.
An unelected group of people, really? The president failed to mention the unelected people we should really be worried about, and that's the HHS workers who are implementing the health care law. We don't even know their names, and they're writing the rules. Senator John Kyl is on the Senate Judiciary Committee. He joins us. Good evening, Senator, and your thoughts about the president apparently doesn't like the fact that this, quote, unelected group, meaning the 9 justices, will be making a determination on constitutionality or not.
Yeah, your first word was weird, and it is kind of weird and incoherent. I mean, the liberals have no problem at all with this unelected group ruling in cases in their favor. And they were all for the court deciding this case when they thought it was going to rule in their favor. But strangely, after the oral arguments, when a lot of observers felt that the liberal case wasn't made very well by the government lawyers, they seemed to be in a panic mode, and a lot of folks, both political and media, now appear to be, as the Wall Street Journal said, mau-mauing the Supreme Court even before it's ruled, intimidating the justices, in effect accusing them before they've even ruled of judicial activism. It is a rather strange thing for the president to do, and I think he did this in the presence of 2 foreign leaders to be criticizing the court. I recall the State of the Union speech when he called out the court, and he seems to have a habit of this. It is not a good thing for the president to denigrate the third branch of government.
Well, you know, I think there's something even odder than that. I mean, here's a guy who, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but he went to Harvard Law School, and every single person who's gone to every single law school in this country, one of the first month of school, you hear of a case called Marbury versus Madison, 1803, which decides still good law, which says the function of the Supreme Court, its power includes the right to review whether a statute is constitutional or not. So I don't know why we're all of a sudden criticizing maybe the one group in the whole city that's actually trying, no, we're disrespect you, of course, Senator, but I mean, they're actually doing the job that they're supposed to.
Well, that's exactly right. That was the holding in Marbury versus Madison, the first great case from the Supreme Court. And I think you could contend that the Supreme Court would be judicially active if it supported this stretching of the Commerce Clause as the Congress did in the Obamacare legislation. I mean, the court, in effect, was asking the litigants, how far can this be stretched? Is there no limit? And I think the court would be imposing some judicial restraint on the Congress, on the federal government, if it drew a line here. Remember, the court has never been presented with this case before, where Congress has forced the citizens to buy a product so that it could then be regulated. And so the court didn't ask for this case, but it came to the court, and it has to make a decision one way or the other. It's not being judicially active if it says to the Congress, whoa, that you've gone too far. I'm sorry.
But the other thing the president says, in part, says that the extraordinary step of overturning a law that was passed by a strong majority of a democratically elected Congress. Number one, it was not a strong majority. In fact, it was really close. Number two, it was a democratically elected Congress, but the democratically elected Congress didn't read the statute and has farmed it out to HHS, to the people who are actually writing the rules and regulations. They aren't elected at all. And so the president's really got this one wrong.
Yeah, 2 points there. As you point out, the democratically controlled Congress almost couldn't pass it because every Republican voted against it. And when Scott Brown was elected from Massachusetts, the liberals thought they had lost until Nancy Pelosi pulled out the procedural gimmick of the so-called budget reconciliation process, sending it back over to the Senate, which could then pass it with less than the majority that is normally required in cases like this. And at the time it was passed, and still to this day, the American people oppose it by about 2 to 1. So it's not exactly like it's a really popular thing that the court would be overturning here.
No, it isn't, and I think it's unusual for the president to be striking out the Supreme Court. But anyway, Senator, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Greta.